They weren't prepared for the smell. Not because it was unpleasant, but because it was powerful, bold, unfamiliar, impossible to ignore. Inside one of Oxford University's most prestigious dining halls, conversations stopped mid-sentence. Silverware froze in mid-air. Scholars, diplomats, and cultural delegates from around the world suddenly fell silent, all because of a single dish placed at the center of the table, a dish most of them had never heard of: Filipino Adobo. And before that night ended, that humble pot would command more respect than any speech given in that historic room. The dinner was supposed to be elegant, predictable, and safe. Representatives from different countries had brought carefully plated dishes designed to impress without shocking anyone. Delicate sauces, subtle flavors, food that whispered rather than announced itself. No one expected something that refused to be quiet. Then Chef Ramon Alvarez entered carrying a heavy pot wrapped in cloth, holding it carefully like it mattered more than anything else in the room. No assistants, no dramatic presentation, no speech, just a quiet man and a dish from home. Ramon wasn't a celebrity chef. He didn't represent a luxury restaurant or a television show. For years, he had traveled through Philippine provinces, learning recipes from elders who never measured ingredients and never wrote anything down, people who cooked by instinct, memory, and love. To him, this wasn't just food. It was survival, history, identity. When he placed the pot on the table, some guests exchanged polite smiles, the kind reserved for something they assume will be interesting but not extraordinary. Then he lifted the lid. Steam rose slowly, curling into the air as if it carried weight. The aroma spread across the table in seconds. Sharp vinegar softened by soy sauce, garlic blooming in the heat, something rich and deeply savory that seemed to carry generations within it. Several guests leaned back, startled by the intensity. Others leaned forward, curiosity overpowering hesitation. One professor quietly asked what it was, carefully pronouncing the unfamiliar name as if unsure it belonged in such a formal setting. "Adobo," Ramon said simply. He didn't oversell it, he didn't apologize for it either. He explained that adobo wasn't a single recipe, but a method, a way Filipinos preserved meat in a tropical climate long before refrigeration existed. Vinegar prevented spoilage, salt from the soy sauce protected the food, slow cooking allowed flavors to deepen over time. Food born not from luxury, but necessity. And yet it had endured for centuries. Small portions were served first, careful spoonfuls placed on pristine white plates beside familiar dishes. Several guests studied the glossy sauce before tasting, bracing themselves for something overpowering. Then came the first bite. One diplomat froze mid-chew, another's eyes widened slightly. A historian lowered his fork slowly, as though needing a moment to process what had just happened. It wasn't what they expected. The acidity didn't overwhelm, it lifted the flavor, making the meat taste deeper rather than heavier. Garlic lingered warmly. The richness felt comforting instead of excessive. Bold but balanced, simple but complex. Within minutes, something subtle began to change in the room. Conversations shifted. Polite small talk gave way to genuine curiosity. Guests began asking questions: how long it cooked, whether each region prepared it differently, what it was traditionally eaten with. Ramon explained that every Filipino family had its own version, some sweeter, some tangier, some using chicken, pork, seafood, or even vegetables. No single authority, no official formula, just tradition passed quietly from one generation to the next. That idea fascinated the academics present, who were used to precise documentation and rigid culinary rules. Here was a dish that refused to be standardized, one that belonged not to institutions, but to families. Then something unexpected happened. Someone asked for more. In formal settings like this, second helpings are rare, especially for unfamiliar food. Servers hesitated for a split second before returning with another portion. Then another guest requested more, and another.
Soon, the dish that had seemed intimidating just minutes earlier became the center of the entire evening. If this moment is making you proud of Filipino culture, tap like so more people can discover stories like this. Sometimes the world only needs one introduction to realize what it's been missing. As plates refilled, the tone of the dinner transformed completely. Delegates who had planned to network strategically now found themselves sharing childhood food memories, family traditions, and stories of home. Adobo had accomplished something speeches often fail to do. It connected people. One guest compared the experience to hearing music in its original language instead of a translation, suddenly richer, more authentic, impossible to replicate. Another admitted they had expected something rustic and simple, but instead found something deeply refined in its own way. The silence that greeted the dish at the beginning of the night had turned into animated conversation, not chaotic, but energized, respectful, alive. Toward the end of the dinner, the host invited Ramon to speak about the cultural meaning of what he had served. Standing before scholars and dignitaries, he didn't talk about technique, he talked about families. He spoke about parents cooking adobo in tiny overseas apartments thousands of miles from home, about children learning the recipe so they wouldn't forget their roots, about celebrations where its familiar aroma meant everyone was finally together again. His voice remained calm, but emotion carried through every word. For many Filipinos abroad, food is not just nourishment, it is memory made tangible. Several guests nodded quietly, recognizing the same truth in their own cultures. At that moment, the dish stopped being just food. It became a story of migration, resilience, and identity. After the applause faded, attendees approached Ramon one by one. They asked for recipes, restaurant recommendations, books about Filipino cuisine. One admitted they had known almost nothing about the Philippines before that night, and now wanted to learn everything. Another confessed they had initially been intimidated by the aroma, but found the taste unexpectedly comforting, something they felt they could crave. By the end of the evening, the once full pot was nearly empty, not because it was served, but because it was requested. Outside, as guests stepped into the cool Oxford night, conversations continued about flavor, history, and how something so simple could leave such a lasting impression. Ramon left quietly, the same way he arrived. No spotlight, no grand exit. For him, the real success wasn't applause, it was understanding. In the weeks that followed, word of the dinner spread through academic circles. Invitations for Filipino culinary presentations began appearing at other institutions. Articles exploring Southeast Asian cuisine gained renewed attention. No single event can change global perception overnight, but moments like this create openings. For Filipinos hearing about the story, it became a quiet source of pride, proof that the dishes they grew up with, often considered ordinary at home, could command respect anywhere in the world. Because authenticity doesn't need to imitate anything else to be powerful. If you believe Filipino culture deserves more recognition on the world stage, consider subscribing to join a community that celebrates these stories together. And maybe that is the real lesson from that silent moment in Oxford's Grand Hall. True cultural exchange isn't about competition, it's about curiosity. It's about being willing to experience something unfamiliar and discovering that it speaks to you anyway. So never underestimate the things you grew up with, the recipes passed down in kitchens, the traditions practiced without ceremony, the flavors that define home. They may seem ordinary until the rest of the world finally tastes them. Share this story with someone who loves Filipino food or someone who needs a reminder that pride can live in the simplest things. And tell us in the comments which Filipino dish instantly makes you feel at home. Because sometimes one unforgettable taste is all it takes for a culture's voice to be heard across the world.